So, you watched Avatar: The Way of Water last year, and because you're a gamer, you thought, hey, a game based on these movies would be pretty cool. Well, you'd be out of luck since the latest Avatar game came out in 2009 and is no longer available for sale because the license ran out. Unless you'd get a second-hand copy or get a pirate costume, a crew, a ship, and do some piracy, you'd have to wait till next year for Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Explore the open-world map of Pandora, save it from the RDA, become the Na'vi. Pre-order now for some exclusive content. I'm not gonna lie, I was initially a bit intrigued, until I saw that it was made by Ubisoft. And if there's one thing Ubisoft is good at, it's squandering promise. And also abuse. Either way, Ubisoft is known at this point for having one game design formula and sticking to it despite how repetitive and obvious it's become. So before I delved into this game, I made a list of every single thing I expect, just to make fun of how predictable Ubisoft's design is. I'll be going through this list throughout the video. Naturally, there will be spoilers, and even though I won't be going out of my way to spoil everything, and to be honest I hardly consider this an exciting story to be deserving of a spoiler warning, do beware, there will be spoilers. So, let's get started. The first thing I notice in the main menu are the DLCs. Or rather what I think they actually are, microtransactions. And this does happen to be on my list. Now look, I know that at this point it is expected that a game launches with DLCs. It's not like gamers could have the self-control to not encourage this practice. However, knowing Ubisoft, I had a feeling that they would do something greedy. And yep, rather than having things cost real-life money, they instead created a premium currency. Yep, Ubisoft brought that multiplayer monetization technique to single-player experiences. And of course, it sells everything from items to bonuses while capitalizing on the various psychologically exploitative features of premium currencies. So as far as I'm concerned, check. Let's start the game. I'll say I was taken by surprise that the game is first person. Now you might ask, how did I not know? Well, once I decide that I'll play a game, I interact with it as little as possible because I want to know nothing about it. Either way, it's a bit strange. When I think of the Na'vi from the movies, I think of the acrobatic battle style and movement they have, which I don't think a first-person perspective would be able to capture well. If anything, it might make it feel more like a Far Cry game rather than its own thing, and that's something we'll be coming back to later. Anyway, the game starts with you and a group of Na'vi orphans in a human school. One of them happens to be your sister, and in the first 5 minutes, she dies. And you know what this means? Check. This is the typical Ubisoft setup, introduce some family and kill them off before you as a player even get to care. It never helps the game's pacing when it's done this way, especially when it's supposedly a huge motivator for the main character, because it doesn't resonate with you no matter how many times it's taunted at you.
Your sister had more fight in her. Such a shame she didn't make it.
Now let's skip over some stuff. Everything goes south because of what happened with Jake Sully in the movies. Obvious villain John Mercer wants to get rid of the orphans, and Alma, being sympathetic to them, decides to save them. What I like about the game's interior design is that everything is actually designed to scale for humans. You, as a towering Na'vi, have to crouch to navigate these spaces, and there's dedication to this design, since throughout your adventure you frequently have to crouch for the sake of exploration. And when you get outside, Pandora is actually quite beautiful, especially at night with bioluminescent foliage and insects. I even had this random moment when I was taking in the scenery and this small orange umbrella creature was floating right in front of me. I had only noticed it when its swirly sound effects started playing around me. It was a really strong and memorable moment because it wasn't scripted at all, and it goes to show how much dedication went into making Pandora really beautiful. Sadly, it's also the biggest and, frankly, only positive thing about this game, because what really awaits you in this world is just a bunch of Ubisoftisms that you could get from any other Ubisoft game. Now, one of the things I was surprised by when I started out this game is that it lets you choose between two exploration modes, Guided and Exploration. A plus for creativity there. Exploration essentially removes quest markers, so you have to guide yourself based on environmental cues. I'm not gonna lie, I was initially surprised to see this, considering that Ubisoft mastered the design methodology of directing your eyeballs straight into whatever objective exists in your immediate vicinity. It actually made me think of something H-Bomber said in his video about Fallout 3.
You again.
When you build a world centered around giving them a blip on their radar to walk towards in a straight line, you hamstring not just their own sense of going on their own journey and making their own decisions.
I was excited to give it a go. and then I turned it off because it was fucking annoying. You see, the problem is that Fallout is set in a wasteland. It's easier to make a place pop because there's really not a lot to distract or confuse you. The land is barren, so of course a gigantic fuck-all dinosaur will attract my attention. But Pandora has layers upon layers of foliage. A lot of stuff that obscures your vision or just confuses you. Like, yeah, my objective is on a cliff, but which one? What elevation are we talking about? Switching to guided simply puts this small blue indicator whenever you use your eagle vision. Whoa, eagle vision? Check! Now let's talk a bit more about this eagle vision. I've always thought of it as a failure of game design. It bypasses the need to make interactable objects visually distinguishable, and this game is just full of objects that would otherwise be absolutely unnoticeable. You can see that Ubisoft got pretty comfortable doing things this way. That being said, it's one of the most annoying iterations of eagle vision. Because of its localized first-person view, you have to spin around till you see what you can interact with, and what's more annoying is that some stuff doesn't become immediately visible. So this delay can make you miss what you're looking for, and you just keep looking around in circles, getting more and more frustrated. And if that's not enough, the environment is so visually vibrant that whatever is highlighted can blend in with everything else. This was especially annoying during those investigation sequences where you have to link clues together, where more often than not there was one thing I had a hard time finding. Then there's also the side quests, which are hardly if ever direct about where you have to go. They only tell you environmental clues or a picture for reference rather than being straightforward. It's as if whether I chose guided or exploration as a mode is but a suggestion. Also, you know you haven't played a Ubisoft game till you experience looking for a cave. The frantic search for a random hole that is annoyingly hard to find, just to get inside. Does Ubisoft think I'm a top? I decided to give side quests a maximum of 2 hours of my life and then moved on. And honestly, good riddance. I did not enjoy them at all. All of these annoyances and wasted time ironically made me want to go back to Ubisoft, pointing out every single thing I have to do, where I have to do it, and be done with it. I think it just goes to show that Ubisoft got so comfortable holding your hand with showing you everything, that the moment they switch to something more immersive, they do it so poorly that I'm begging to just go back. Now, back to the story. I was in the Resistance HQ and... Well, a collectible? In all fairness, there are these words next to collectibles. Lots of them. And these words, if you don't know, mean that I predict that there's a lot more than some pieces of exposition to collect. And... boy, there is so much more. How much more? Well, you have plants that increase your health. Lots of them too. Plants that give you skill points, plants that give you special perks, comic book pages, blade wing trails, wind flutes, mycelium networks, Icron equipment baskets, totems, kites, dolls.
Beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes.
Check. However, you might ask, are these things at least engaging to interact with? Well, no. Blade wing trails have you follow some flying insects, mycelium networks have you follow 4 short trails, totems have you follow, again, a trail. None of these things are in any way innovative or frankly interesting. Just busy, mindless work. The most frustrating thing about this design mindset, if you want to call it that, is that there's nothing intriguing to engage with in the game's entire world. The game's own design simply discourages exploration because it never results in anything interesting. Heck, often these side things are also repeated. Most bases, dig sites, factories often look like carbon copies of each other. No unique powers or weapons or gameplay, just ubiquitous rewards that I honestly wouldn't care about if it weren't for me wanting to get all of the game's trophies. And let's talk about weapons since we're at it, because the lack of creativity is rendered palpable. You have 7 weapon types at your disposal, 3 of which are bows. Then there's a spear launcher, which works just like a bow, and a grenade thrower that is like a bow that throws bombs. And then there's 2 guns. It's such an unimaginative collection of weapons that for the most part do the same thing in the slightest of different ways. It makes combat so damn repetitive even if you switch between bows, because frankly you are still using the same weapon. And speaking of combat, I had such a bad time with it, to the point of frustration. Listen, I'm not much of a first-person shooter guy, especially on consoles because joysticks don't match mice. Now there's 2 reasons why I didn't enjoy it. Well, 3 if you count the joysticks. The first is that enemies have insane accuracy. They just shred you down in seconds. It doesn't matter how far away you are, if there's low visibility or anything, it's just full-on aimbot. And, while we're at it, Christ, I used the same hook like 3 times. Let's also talk about stealth. Yes, Avatar has a stealth system. A really shit one, but a system nonetheless. Let me tell you how it quote-unquote works. Essentially, if you're spotted by one enemy, everyone is immediately aware of your presence. If you miss even a single shot, any enemy is able to pinpoint your exact location regardless of visibility. There's this one memorable moment in a mission where you have to rescue someone. Everything is on fire, so visibility is naturally low, but the enemies spot you just like that. I had a hard time with it. Every missed shot or shot that killed someone in view of an enemy immediately makes them aware of where you are and then they mow you down. It's a ridiculous system, laughably flawed and incredibly simple. The second is that the game just loves sending enemies caked in armor your way. Any single thing you do to progress will spawn a new wave of enemies drenched in protection from any possible side of the map. It can easily become a case of dying repeatedly and trying to find ways to cheese enemies, a spot you can force them through and throw obscene amounts of mines, or a corridor they can't reach. It's not fun, it feels unfair, and every death made my willingness to engage with this game go away bit by bit. And it's not like this game is worthy of a lot of leeway. Between the game being just boring and its combat being frustrating, the game doesn't have a lot of room to F around. An aspect that I think compounds this frustration is the fact that Ubisoft likes to make RPG elements like player levels intrinsic to the gameplay. It's that weird situation where bows have different stats in realistic circumstances, which doesn't make sense because getting hit in the face with an arrow isn't really a numbers game. And this is especially glaring when it comes to fighting wild animals. There's this one bit where you investigate the whereabouts of a Navi and you have to fight a Thanator. And this Thanator is so caked up in health that you can throw grenade after grenade and it will barely do anything. This is how weird the system is. And I say this in full confidence that if, for instance, a leopard would step on a trip grenade, it'll transform into red mist. No health bar needed. Now, back to the story. You do some stuff against the RDA, ally yourself with new Navi clans, and your group celebrates their progress. But then...
Disaster strikes. Your base is attacked.
This is what we know in the industry as another typical Ubisoft setup. It's that distinguishable feeling that you get when you step into your hub and be like, yep, this place is getting attacked. But let us not return to the list of Ubiquity yet, because this next part is a buffet of Ubi tropes.
I don't brag.
Main antagonist Mercer has the chance to kill you, but doesn't, for no reason. You're imprisoned instead and have to escape, and then you find out that one of your Navi friends betrayed you.
List time.
Base attack, sparing protagonist, jailbreak, betrayal. That is a record of 4 in 30 minutes. I feel like I've played this exact sequence so many times in pretty much any Ubisoft game you can name. Far Cry 3, Far Cry 5, Far Cry Primal. And look, I know the same sequence is also in many non-Ubisoft games too, but this is me trying to segue into how this is more of a Far Cry game rather than a unique Avatar experience. Naturally, a huge reason is the similar first-person perspective gameplay. And the drug dreams, which of course it has. This is a Ubisoft game. Check. Now look, I know I'm being somewhat facetious here, they aren't technically drug dreams, but you gotta give it to me that they're pretty similar as a concept. What I found surprising was not that many other players saw the similarity, but how many are saying that it's a good thing, how it might even be the best Far Cry game, which, no, if I wanted to play Far Cry I would have purchased Far Cry. But I didn't, I wanted something authentic to the concept of Avatar. What I got is something shockingly similar to Far Cry Primal, and I'm not saying that just because of the bows. From the very start, the way you pick up resources, the way you replenish your ammo on the go, the hunting, it's like they just reused Far Cry Primal. Like I'm playing the same game all over again but with a different look. And I have something to say about this being considered a better Far Cry game. Specifically, no. Primal had personality. You were playing among a group of primitives who couldn't enunciate anything but had distinguishable personalities. Like, the limitation of characters that don't speak actually made them take a different approach to showcasing who they are. They may not have been all that memorable, but it feels miles ahead. Also, you might have been the first person to get syphilis. Avatar, despite being set in a beautiful sci-fi world, lacks excitement. Its characters are just one-dimensional. You have the annoying quirky one, the one who'll obviously betray the group, and the villains who are just characterized like being dicks. Oh, look at that. The guy was trying to do a corporate power grab. Is this character work? Even down to the gameplay, Primal is just better. You may have primitive weapons like clubs, bigger clubs and spears, which is not that creative and works exactly how you'd expect, but the game does something unique. It lets you throw them. You can throw any melee weapon, letting you switch seamlessly between ranged and close combat. And I know it sounds a bit simple, I mean obviously they would throw weapons, but I can't stress enough how this small feature makes combat so uniquely enjoyable. I've played it again for the sake of getting some footage, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it way more than I enjoyed Frontiers of Pandora. Just think about it, a game that came out 7 years ago is better than one with a most likely higher budget and bigger production. And this is not to say that Primal is some amazing masterpiece. Remember, it is made by Ubisoft. It's by all means a cacophony of tropes and is otherwise largely unremarkable. But it's better, and that's a problem. By now I'm fast approaching the end of the game, and I don't know if it's just me, but the ending kinda came a bit fast? I don't know if it's a pacing issue, or if I just got so bored I stopped caring. Actually, I don't think I can really enunciate enough how boring this was. Even down to the missions themselves, you do the same things you would do in any activity like the bajillion of bases around Pandora. I just can't stress enough how there's nothing, absolutely nothing exciting to this game. But by now, I started having a strong hunch about what the final boss would be. You see, the game's enemy variety is actually shockingly low. There's either on-ground units or people in a variety of mechs, and then some turrets and helicopters. Helicopter, helicopter! At this point, I was convinced that the final boss would be a mech, maybe with some random reinforcements because Ubisoft wouldn't really know how to make things more exciting. But it turns out that it's much worse than that. Now, I should say here that I've made a mistake. I got frustrated with the final boss, paused the recording and forgot to unpause it after I came back. There's not a lot missing, but I'm not willing to play this game again in its entirety just for that. So I'll be using someone else's footage and giving credits on the screen when it comes to it. The final boss is indeed a mech, not piloted by Mercer or anyone pertinent to the story. Get this, instead it's a random NPC, they don't even have a name. And this mech is dipped in the finest armor. It's such a bullet sponge that at first I thought it was invulnerable and needed a specific strategy. But no, it just has an insane amount of HP and launches mines like crazy that explode fast and deal lots of damage. It doesn't help that some resources glitch and don't respawn with a checkpoint, and that at some point my aiming reticule just disappeared and it didn't let me interact with anything. I really regret not capturing that footage. But overall, I'm really tired of this sort of boss design. It's so boring, anticlimactic, and just plain frustrating. Who keeps coming up with this? This sort of stuff has been criticized for years, and yet this mark of an absolute lack of creativity keeps showing up. There is no satisfaction to be gained from this, other than me crossing it off the list. And that's it, you prevent a disaster, leave bad boy Mercer for dead, and the characters start pretending they have a personality.
And we can move on now. As a new family, right?
That's weird.
For the Platinum Trophy I still needed to do a few things, but there wasn't anything remarkable. So, let's wrap up. Out of 13 predictions, I got 11, a difference of 2, and 2 out of 10 sounds just about right. Now, is there anything that actually impressed me? No, I know I praised how beautiful the game looks at night, but bioluminescent flora is not really a groundbreaking thing. But honestly, I just found myself so bored the more I played. It's like bit by bit, my brain registered that there's nothing interesting to experience. Nothing new, nothing cool, nothing creative. I was just shutting off more and more with each play session. Like, I'm willing to look at a game and say that it is of a middle-of-the-line mediocrity, but Avatar is so lacking in excitement, to an extreme degree, and an offensive one at that. There's nothing unique that this game does, and everything else has been done much better by other games. It represents a massive failure in creativity from start to end, and feels absolutely soulless as a consequence. Ultimately, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora will not be remembered, because there's nothing worth remembering. And if it were to ever be remembered, then it should be remembered as that time Ubisoft had a license to create a game about a beautiful sci-fi world and did fuck all with it. And that's all I have to say about Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Slap that bad boy there, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, see you next time.